Hello and welcome to Super English Talks. I'm your host Sarah, and today we are diving into a fun and exciting topic that so many English learners around the world love: movies. Yes, that's right, today we are talking about the best movies to learn English fast, and how you can use them to improve your listening, speaking, and even your cultural understanding while having fun. I know that sometimes studying English can feel heavy, like reading grammar books, memorizing vocabulary lists, or doing endless exercises, but the good news is that movies give you a natural and enjoyable way to practice. When you watch a film in English, you're not only listening to real people speak the language, you're also seeing their emotions, their body language, their reactions, and the situations that surround their words. All of that helps your brain connect English with meaning much faster than simply staring at a page. Think about the first time you ever watched a Hollywood movie. Maybe it was something exciting like Harry Potter, or maybe a funny film like Home Alone, or even an action-packed movie like Spider-Man. Did you notice how even if you didn't understand every single word, you could still guess what was happening? That's because movies give you both language and context. And when you combine those two, your brain starts to pick up on patterns, on tone, on common phrases, and eventually you find yourself repeating them without even thinking. So in today's podcast, I'm going to walk you through why movies are such a powerful tool for learning English, which movies are the best for learners at the B1 to B2 level, and how you can watch them in a way that makes your English grow much faster than you thought possible. Now, I want you to imagine sitting down in a comfortable chair, maybe with some popcorn in your hand, and turning on a movie in English. At first, it might feel a little challenging. You hear words that sound fast, you see characters moving quickly, and you wonder if you'll be able to follow along. But as the scenes continue, you start recognizing phrases you've learned before, you catch words you know, and you realize that the expressions on the actors' faces are helping you understand what they mean. That's the magic of movies. They give you English in real time, with real emotion, in a way that's both natural and unforgettable. Some learners often ask me, Sarah, should I use subtitles when watching movies in English? And my answer is yes, but with a strategy. If you are at B1 or B2 level, I recommend starting with English subtitles. This way, when you hear a word, you can also see it written on the screen, which strengthens your listening and reading skills at the same time. Over time, as you become more comfortable, you can turn off the subtitles and challenge yourself to rely only on your ears. You'll be surprised at how quickly your listening improves once you stop depending on reading. But don't worry, it's a process. The most important thing is that you enjoy the movie, because if you enjoy it, your brain will stay engaged and you will naturally absorb more English. Another question I get a lot is, Sarah, what types of movies are best for learning English? And my honest answer is that not all movies are equal when it comes to learning. For example, some films use very complex, poetic, or old-fashioned language, which might be too difficult for learners. Others might have characters who speak extremely fast or use heavy slang that even native speakers from other countries sometimes struggle with. That's why it's important to choose movies that are fun, but also clear, modern, and not too complicated. Comedy, family films, light dramas, and even animated movies are excellent choices because they usually use everyday English that you can apply in your own conversations. Let me share a little story here. I once worked with a student.
Let's talk about a fantastic movie that so many English learners love, The King's Speech. This is a drama about King George VI, who struggled with a speech impediment and had to overcome it to give important public speeches. The wonderful thing about this film is that it is literally about learning to speak better. The dialogue is clear, formal at times, but also very emotional. You hear the king working with his speech therapist, repeating words, practicing sentences, and building confidence. For English learners, this movie is like a mirror. When you watch the king struggle with speaking, you realize that you are not alone in your journey. Even native speakers in history had to work hard to improve their communication. And when you watch him practice, you can actually practice with him. Imagine pausing the movie, repeating the lines he's trying to say, and then comparing your pronunciation. That's an incredibly powerful exercise. Another film that I often recommend for intermediate learners is Notting Hill. This romantic comedy, starring Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, is set in London and is filled with charming, everyday conversations. It's light, it's funny, and the dialogue is not too fast, which makes it a perfect choice for learners who want to improve both their listening and their sense of humor in English. The great thing about romantic comedies like Notting Hill is that they are based on real-life situations, people meeting, talking about their lives, misunderstanding each other, and expressing emotions. That means the language you hear is very close to what you might actually use in your own conversations. Plus, the British accent in this film gives you a chance to hear something different from the typical American movies, which helps you expand your listening skills and get used to different varieties of English. Now, let's talk a little bit about strategy. When you sit down to watch a movie like Notting Hill, don't just let it play from beginning to end without stopping. I recommend choosing a favorite scene and really focusing on it. For example, the scene in the bookstore where Hugh Grant's character first meets Julia Roberts' character is filled with natural, slightly awkward, but very funny dialogue. If you watch that scene 3 times in a row, first just to enjoy, second to catch the words with subtitles, and third to repeat along with the actors, you will start to feel like you're part of the movie yourself. This method is often called shadowing, repeating after the characters with the same speed and tone. It can feel a little silly at first, but trust me, it's one of the fastest ways to improve your speaking rhythm and pronunciation. Another excellent movie for learners is The Social Network, which tells the story of how Facebook was created. Now, this film does have some very fast dialogue, especially in the courtroom scenes, but it's also an amazing opportunity to challenge your listening. The language is modern, business-oriented, and sharp. For learners at the B2 level, this kind of movie pushes you to really focus and get used to fast-paced English. And again, you don't need to understand every single word. Instead, focus on the main ideas. Ask yourself, what are the characters trying to achieve? How are they feeling? What kind of words keep coming up again and again? For example, in The Social Network, you'll hear words like website, share, business, friend, idea, and money repeated often. These are useful words that connect to everyday conversations about technology and modern life. Let me also share another great example, The Intern, starring Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway. This film is a warm, lighthearted story about a senior intern who works at an online fashion company. The language here is modern, professional, and friendly. You hear workplace English, everyday expressions, and also plenty of emotional conversations about life, friendship, and family. What I love about The Intern is that it gives learners a taste of how people actually speak in offices, in meetings, and during casual chats at work. If you are someone preparing to use English in your job, this film is especially helpful because you'll hear real workplace phrases like "I'll get back to you," "Let's schedule a meeting," or "That's a great idea." And the delivery of the lines is clear and not too fast, which makes it accessible even if you're still building your confidence. Now, I want to talk about why emotional connection matters so much in learning. When you cry during a movie, when you laugh out loud, when you feel excited or angry about a character, your brain remembers the language connected to that emotion. It's almost like when you remember the lyrics of a song because it made you feel something special. Emotions create strong memories. So, when you watch The Pursuit of Happiness and you feel the struggles of the father trying to survive and take care of his son, the words he uses stick with you because they are connected to your own feelings. That's why I always tell learners, don't just watch movies that are easy. Watch movies that move you, because those are the ones that will make the English unforgettable. One question I often get is whether learners should watch the same movie multiple times or keep switching to new movies. My advice is a balance. Repetition is essential, as I said earlier, because it helps you internalize phrases and patterns. But variety is also important because it exposes you to different voices, accents, and contexts. So maybe watch your favorite film 3 times, really working with it, then move on to another one in a different genre. For example, after watching The Intern 3 times, you could switch to something like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is full of adventure, creativity, and inspiring dialogue. This balance keeps you motivated and also helps your brain adapt to different types of English. Another fun way to use movies is to imitate not only the words but also the body language. Pay attention to how actors move their hands, how they smile, how they raise their eyebrows when they ask questions. These physical signals are part of communication, too. In English, tone and gesture often carry meaning that words alone don't. By copying both the language and the body language, you'll sound much more natural and confident when you speak. It's like practicing the full performance of English, not just the vocabulary. And speaking of performance, one movie I cannot forget to mention is Dead Poets Society, starring Robin Williams. This movie is about a teacher who inspires his students to think differently, to express themselves, and to love literature. The language in this film is a mix of everyday classroom English and powerful, emotional speeches. For learners, it's a chance to hear inspiring words delivered with passion. When Robin Williams says "Carpe diem," seize the day, those words stick in your memory not just because they are simple, but because of the emotion behind them. Watching movies like this can inspire you not only to learn English but to think about how language can be powerful in expressing ideas and feelings.
So, in this part of our journey together, I hope you're starting to see that movies are like mini English worlds you can enter anytime. They give you real conversations, real emotions, and real practice. But the way you watch them makes all the difference. Be active, repeat lines, shadow the actors, and connect emotionally to the story. That's how you transform a simple movie night into a real English learning experience. And don't worry if sometimes it feels overwhelming. Remember, even if you understand only 50% of a movie at first, that's already progress. The more you watch, the more you'll catch. Think of it like training your ear. Just like athletes train their muscles with repeated practice, you train your ears and your brain by listening again and again. Over time, what once sounded too fast will suddenly sound clear. That's the moment you realize, wow, I've really improved. We've talked about the power of choosing the right movies, connecting emotionally with the story, and practicing actively instead of just passively watching. Now, I want to take you even further into the world of movies by exploring a wider variety of genres, accents, and cultural backgrounds, because English is not just one sound or one style. It's a global language, and movies are one of the best ways to experience that diversity. Let's start with the idea of accents. Many learners are familiar mostly with American English because Hollywood dominates the movie industry. But English is spoken in many parts of the world, and every accent has its own rhythm and melody. One excellent film to experience British English is The Imitation Game, starring Benedict Cumberbatch. This movie is based on the true story of Alan Turing, the mathematician who helped crack codes during World War II. The dialogue is intelligent, emotional, and full of British expressions and pronunciation. By watching it, you not only hear clear British English, but also get exposure to the way words sound different when spoken with that accent. At first, it may feel a little challenging, but after a while your ear adjusts, and you start to recognize the same words you already know, just pronounced differently. This is an important skill because English exams like IELTS often use multiple accents, and movies can prepare you for that. On the other side, let's not forget about Australian English. A fun, lighthearted film to experience this accent is Finding Nemo. Yes, it's an animated film, but the setting is in Australia, and you get a taste of Australian voices along with the heartwarming story of a father searching for his son. Again, the language is simple enough for B1 and B2 learners, but the exposure to a slightly different accent makes your listening sharper. It's like exercising different muscles of your ear. Now, let's talk about genre variety. If you always watch only one type of film, like romantic comedies, your English will grow, but only in that direction. To become more versatile, you should sometimes step into dramas, thrillers, or even historical films. For example, Pride and Prejudice, the adaptation of Jane Austen's novel, gives you exposure to a slightly more formal, elegant style of English. It may not be exactly how people speak today in everyday life, but it's still valuable because it trains your listening to more complex sentence structures. Plus, the film is filled with emotion, romance, and social interactions, which keeps it engaging even if the language is a little more advanced. For those of you who enjoy thrillers, I recommend something like The Terminal, starring Tom Hanks. In this movie, a man from another country gets stuck at an airport and cannot leave because of political problems in his homeland. What makes this film brilliant for English learners is that the main character starts with very little English and slowly learns to communicate with the people around him. You actually see him learning new words and phrases throughout the movie. As a learner, you can identify with him and follow his journey, almost learning alongside him. The movie is touching, funny, and a great reminder that everyone starts somewhere and progress is possible.
Let's begin with one of the most practical strategies I know, listening in layers. Many learners try to listen for every single word at once, and that often leads to frustration. But movies are rich and layered, and you don't have to catch everything the first time. Instead, try this method. The first time you watch a movie, just focus on the story. Don't worry too much about the language. Let yourself enjoy it. The second time, focus on listening for repeated phrases. You'll notice that certain expressions come up again and again in natural conversations, like "Are you okay?" or "That sounds great," or "What do you mean?" These are the building blocks of everyday English. The third time, focus on pronunciation and rhythm. Listen closely to how the actors stress certain words, where they pause, how their tone rises when asking a question or falls when making a statement. By breaking your listening into layers, you're training your brain step by step, instead of overwhelming it all at once. Now, let's bring this method to life with a few examples. One film that works wonderfully for listening in layers is The Holiday, a romantic comedy starring Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, Jude Law, and Jack Black. The story is light, the dialogue is filled with natural, everyday expressions, and the pace is not too fast. On your first watch, you'll laugh at the humor and feel warm with the romance. On your second watch, you'll start to notice useful phrases like "I'm not sure," "That's amazing," and "What's going on?" And on your third watch, you can practice imitating the way the actors deliver those lines. This turns a fun holiday movie into a practical English lesson without you even realizing it. Another excellent film for layered listening is Cast Away, starring Tom Hanks. In this movie, he spends much of the film stranded on an island, which means the dialogue is not too heavy or fast. The language you hear is often simple and repeated, like when he talks to his friend Wilson, the volleyball. Because of the slower pace, it gives learners time to process and practice. Plus, the emotional depth of the film keeps you engaged even when the language is minimal. Now, let's move to something more challenging for those of you who feel ready. A great example is Inception, directed by Christopher Nolan. The dialogue here is much faster, the concepts are complex, and the plot is layered. This is not an easy movie for learners, but it's a brilliant challenge for B2-level students who want to stretch their listening skills. The key here is not to worry about understanding everything. Focus on catching key phrases and noticing how characters interact under pressure. You'll hear phrases like "We need to move fast," "Are you in?" or "What happens if we fail?" These are short but powerful sentences that you can catch even in a fast-paced film. Watching something like Inception pushes your listening boundaries and makes other films feel easier afterwards. Another point I want to highlight is the importance of emotional repetition. Remember how I said earlier that emotions make language stick? Well, one fun way to use this is to choose your favorite emotional scenes from different movies and create a personal learning playlist. For example, maybe you love the scene in The Pursuit of Happiness where Will Smith finally gets the job. Or maybe the courtroom speech in A Few Good Men where Jack Nicholson says, "You can't handle the truth." Or maybe the romantic airport scene in Love Actually. Collect these scenes, rewatch them regularly, and practice the lines. Because you already have an emotional connection, the language will sink in much deeper. Now let's talk about another group of films that are fantastic for English learners, teen and coming-of-age movies. These are movies about young people growing up, going to school, making friends, and discovering life. The reason they are so useful is that the language is often modern, simple, and filled with expressions that young people actually use. A great example is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. The dialogue in this film is authentic, filled with everyday conversations about school, friendship, and feelings. Another example is Mean Girls, which is both funny and packed with slang and idioms that young people in America often use. Watching these films helps you understand how English sounds in casual, youthful settings. Of course, not all of the slang will be useful, but hearing it helps you get used to how real conversations flow outside of textbooks. And speaking of idioms and slang, movies are one of the best sources to pick them up. For example, in action movies, you'll often hear phrases like "hang in there," "let's get out of here," or "we've got company." In romantic comedies, you'll hear "it's not you, it's me, let's take a chance," or "you're one of a kind." These phrases are not always taught in English classes, but they are what make you sound natural when you speak. The trick is not to try to memorize every slang word you hear, but to notice the ones that repeat across different movies. Those are the ones that people really use in daily life. Another beautiful way to learn with movies is to connect them with your own life. Let me give you an example. One of my students loved the movie Inside Out, the animated film about emotions. After watching it, she started labeling her feelings in English during her daily life, just like the characters in the movie: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. This simple habit helped her connect vocabulary with her own emotions, which made the words unforgettable. You can do the same. After watching a cooking movie like Ratatouille, you can practice cooking in your kitchen while saying the names of ingredients in English. After watching a sports movie like Coach Carter, you can practice describing your own favorite sport in English. The idea is to bring the language from the screen into your real world.
Let's not forget about documentaries. While not exactly movies in the traditional sense, documentaries are another goldmine for learners. They are usually narrated clearly with strong pronunciation and sometimes subtitles. A great one to start with is March of the Penguins, narrated by Morgan Freeman. His voice is slow, clear, and full of emotion. Documentaries about nature, history, or culture give you exposure to a slightly more formal type of English, but still in a way that's accessible. Plus, you learn interesting facts along the way. Now, before I close this part, I want to remind you of one thing: patience. Language learning through movies is not an overnight process. You won't wake up tomorrow speaking like Julia Roberts or Tom Hanks after one film. But little by little, as you watch, repeat, and connect, your brain is building a library of sounds, phrases, and expressions. Every time you hear the same phrase in a different movie, it becomes stronger in your memory. Every time you repeat a line out loud, your mouth gets more comfortable with the rhythm of English. Over weeks and months, the improvement becomes clear. And the best part is that you enjoyed every step of the process because you were watching stories that made you laugh, cry, and think. So, as we move into the final part of this episode, remember this: movies are not just entertainment. They are living, breathing classrooms that you can carry in your pocket, available anytime you want. All you need is the right mindset, the willingness to practice actively, and the curiosity to explore different genres and accents. With that, you'll not only improve your English, you'll also gain a deeper love for the art of storytelling itself. We've spent so much time exploring how movies can transform the way you learn English, and in this last section, I want to bring everything together, give you some final movie recommendations, and leave you with motivation to actually take action and try this method for yourself. Because learning English with movies is not just a theory, it's something you can begin today, and if you stay consistent, you'll see real results faster than you ever imagined. Let's start by revisiting why movies are such a powerful tool. Movies combine sound, visuals, emotion, and context all at once. That's what makes them special. When you read a textbook, you only see the words. When you listen to an audio clip, you only hear the sound. But when you watch a movie, you get the full picture. You see the expressions on the actors' faces, you hear the tone of their voices, and you feel the emotions in the scene. This combination gives your brain multiple ways to understand and remember the language. It's like having subtitles inside your memory. You don't just remember the word, you remember the scene where it was used, the way it was said, and the feeling it created. Now, let me take you into a few more movie recommendations that can serve as both entertainment and study material. One beautiful film that I often suggest is The Blind Side, starring Sandra Bullock. This movie tells the true story of a family who takes in a homeless teenager and helps him succeed in football and in life. The language is modern and clear, the conversations are emotional, and the story is inspiring. You'll hear family English, sports English, and motivational English all in one. It's the kind of film that makes you feel good while also teaching you useful vocabulary. Another excellent film is Good Will Hunting, starring Matt Damon and Robin Williams. This movie is full of deep, emotional conversations between a young genius and his therapist. The dialogue is sometimes fast, but it's incredibly powerful. There are scenes where the characters express anger, sadness, love, and hope, and all of those emotions help you connect with the language. Plus, Robin Williams' role as the therapist gives you beautifully clear and thoughtful English that's great for learners to practice with. If you want something lighter but still useful, 500 Days of Summer is a great romantic film filled with natural conversations. The characters speak in a very modern, everyday way that feels close to real life. It's funny, emotional, and full of phrases you can actually use in daily conversations. Watching movies like this helps you understand how English works in casual, personal situations. Now, let's imagine together how you might use one of these films in your study routine. Let's take The Blind Side as an example. On the first day, you simply watch the whole film with English subtitles. You enjoy the story and just get familiar with the characters and situations. On the second day, you go back and watch one favorite scene again, this time focusing on catching the exact words. You pause, rewind, and maybe even write down a few phrases. On the third day, you watch that same scene again, but this time you repeat the lines out loud, trying to copy the pronunciation and rhythm of the actors. After 3 days, you've not only enjoyed a movie but also actively learned English in a natural and fun way. And if you repeat this process with different films, imagine how much English you'll absorb over a few months. One important reminder I want to leave you with is this: don't be afraid of not understanding everything. Learning a language is like putting together a puzzle. At the beginning, you only have a few pieces, and the picture is incomplete. But every movie you watch, every line you repeat, adds more pieces to the puzzle. Slowly, the picture becomes clearer. If you expect yourself to understand 100% from the start, you'll only feel frustrated. Instead, celebrate the small victories. If you understood one joke in a comedy that you didn't understand before, that's progress. If you caught a new phrase and used it in your own life, that's progress. Step by step, scene by scene, you are moving forward. Another great way to boost your learning is to talk about the movies you watch. After finishing a film, try summarizing it in English, either by writing it in a notebook or by speaking out loud to yourself. Pretend you're telling a friend what the movie was about. This exercise forces you to practice vocabulary, sentence structure, and storytelling. And if you have friends who are also learning English, watch a movie together and then discuss it in English. Ask each other, what did you think of the main character? Which scene was your favorite? Did you learn any new words? These small conversations make your learning more social and fun. Now, I know some of you might be wondering, Sarah, what if I don't have much time? What if I can't sit through a tower film every day? That's okay. You don't need to watch a whole movie at once. Even 10 minutes a day can be powerful if you use it actively. Choose a short scene, maybe from YouTube or a DVD, and focus just on that. Over a week, those 10-minute sessions add up. The key is consistency, not length. It's better to practice a little every day than to watch one movie once a month and then forget about it. Another question I often get is about subtitles in your native language. Should you use them? My answer is, only at the very beginning and only if you feel completely lost. Native language subtitles can help you understand the story, but they don't train your ear in English. If your goal is to learn English, then English subtitles are the way to go. They connect the sound with the spelling, and that double input makes the learning stronger. Eventually, you can challenge yourself by turning them off, but don't feel pressured to do that too soon. Use subtitles as a bridge, not as a permanent crutch. As we near the end of this episode, I want to leave you with a few final films that I think are simply must-watch for English learners. Number 1, The Shawshank Redemption. This classic movie is full of meaningful dialogue, clear narration, and unforgettable lines. It's a bit long, but every scene is rich with useful English. Number 2, The Sound of Music. This older musical is wonderful for learners because the songs are slow, clear, and easy to sing along with. It's both joyful and educational. Number 3, Inside Out, which I mentioned earlier. It's an animated movie, but the way it explores emotions makes it perfect for learners to connect vocabulary with feelings. And number 4, The Devil Wears Prada, for anyone who wants to improve workplace English and hear natural, witty conversations. So, my dear listeners, as I wrap up this long journey today, I want you to imagine your next movie night. Instead of just pressing play and sitting back, you now have tools. You know how to watch with purpose, how to repeat, how to connect emotionally, and how to bring the language from the screen into your real life. Movies are not just entertainment anymore, they're your secret classroom, available anytime, anywhere. Remember, learning English doesn't always have to be about textbooks and tests. It can also be about laughter, tears, excitement, and adventure. Every time you watch a movie, you're not only enjoying a story, you're also building your English step by step. So pick a film, grab your popcorn, and start learning. The more you practice, the faster you'll improve. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the lines you once repeated nervously are now coming out of your mouth naturally, confidently, and fluently. Thank you so much for joining me today on Super English Talks. I hope this episode inspires you to explore movies not just as stories, but as powerful tools to grow your English. Remember, your journey with English is like your favorite movie, full of ups and downs, full of emotion, but always worth watching till the end. Keep practicing, keep smiling, and I'll see you in the next episode.